on Exodus chapter 3. Verse 1 says, Now Moses was pasturing the flock of Jethro, his father-in-law, the priest of Midian, and he led the flock to the west side of the wilderness and came to Horeb, the mountain of Elohim. Now, Horeb, it's the same mountain as Mount Sinai. Okay, there's some a lot of controversy as to where Sinai is really located. For hundreds of years, they claimed it was located in the Sinai Peninsula. The problem is, well, there's lots of problems with that, but there is absolutely no archaeological evidence that Israel was ever there. None whatsoever. Okay, and Christianity has held to that, and I think it's wrong. Now, it says here in this passage, he led the flock to the west side of the wilderness. Now, in that area is located in the back of the desert then, and that's in Saudi Arabia. And that's more likely where Mount Sinai is. There have been some really good exploration videos on that. We've watched some of them here, and they are very good and very convincing. And I tend to go with that instead of the traditional. I'm trying to think where they even got that first location from. It was from I think it was from a seer, a fortune teller who, claimed that that's where Mount Sinai was, and they got that maybe 4th or 5th century, just kind of stuck with it. But I may not remember that correctly, but I think that's right. Now, Moses' father-in-law here, it says his name is Jethro, but it's not. His name is Reuel, and that's R-E-U-E-L, is how we spell it, but it's pronounced Reuel. And he is, we were told in Exodus 2:18, they came to Reuel, his father, and said, "Why have you come back so soon today?" That's probably his given name. Jethro is probably associated with his title of priest of Midian. In Exodus 18:1, it says, Now Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard of all that Elohim had done for Moses and for Israel, his people, how Yahweh had brought Israel out of Egypt. So Jethro is probably a title to go with that priesthood of Midian. Verse 2 of Exodus 3. And the angel of Yahweh appeared to him in a blazing fire from the midst of a bush. And he looked, and behold, the bush was burning with fire, yet the bush was not consumed. This is probably the same fire that Yahweh appeared in when he made his covenant with Abraham, by the way. We see a burning bush here, but if you recall, when he made that covenant with Abraham, in Genesis 15, starting at verse 13, and Elohim said to Abram, Know for certain that your descendants will be strangers in a land that is not theirs, where they'll be enslaved and oppressed 400 years. But I will also judge the nation whom they serve, and afterward they will come out with many possessions. And as for you, they shall go to your fathers in peace. You shall be buried at an old age. Then in the 4th generation they shall return here, for the iniquity of the Amorite is not yet complete. And it came about when the sun had set that it was very dark, and behold, there appeared a smoking oven and a flaming torch, which passed between these pieces. Now that's probably the same thing, and he's referring to this time of Moses, too, when he did this. Exodus 3, verse 3. So Moses said, I must turn aside now and see this marvelous sight, why the bush is not burned up. When Yahweh saw that he turned aside to look, Elohim called to him from the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here I am. Then he said, Do not come near here. Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place on which you are standing is holy ground. Now, Joshua has a similar experience years later. In Joshua 5, verses 14 and 15. And he said, No, rather, I indeed come now as a captain of the host of Yahweh. And Joshua fell on his face to the earth and bowed down and said to him, What is my master to say to his servant? And the captain of Yahweh's host said to Joshua, Remove your sandals from your feet, for the place we are standing is holy. And Joshua did so. Now Moses is on ground that's set apart for service to Elohim. And he told him here he has to take his sandals off.
Were Moses and Joshua, were they at the same location?
I don't think they were at the same location. Yeah, different spots. I think it's, I'm sure it has more to do with whose presence they're in than anything. Verse 6. He said also, I am the Elohim of your father, the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Isaac, and the Elohim of Jacob. Then Moses hid his face, for he was afraid to look at Elohim. Now, this is the title of Elohim. He is the same Elohim we serve today. Now, Yeshua used the same title in reference to his father also. In Matthew 22, verses 31 and 32, but regarding the resurrection of the dead, have you not read that which was spoken to you by Elohim, saying, I am the Elohim of Abraham, and the Elohim of Isaac, and the Elohim of Jacob. He is not the Elohim of the dead, but of the living. So, keeping in mind the Brit Hadashah, the New Testament doesn't try to start a new religion. So, and Peter also used this same title in referencing the Father, and referencing the love he showed through Messiah. In Acts 3, verse 13, it says, this is Peter talking, the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the Elohim of our fathers has glorified his servant Yeshua, the one whom you delivered up and disowned in the presence of Pilate when he had decided to release him. And we're going to look at this title again here in just a few minutes. It's very important, very important. Verses 7 and 8 of Exodus 3. And Yahweh said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people who are in Egypt, and have given heed to their cry because of their taskmasters. For I am aware of their sufferings. So I've come down to deliver them from the power of the Egyptians, and to bring them up from the land to a good spacious land, to a land flowing with milk and honey, to the place of the Canaanite, and the Hittite, and the Amorite, and the Perizzite, and the Hivite, and the Jebusite. Now, Palestine had such a natural richness to it, and the variety and excellence of its productions are attested by Scripture and also by many other ancient documents. And these ancient descriptions strongly contrast what we hear from later travelers to that area. The expression they're flowing with milk and honey, that's used by ancient Greek poets when they described the land also. It was that beautiful. They were obviously, those things were in greater abundance in the time of Moses than in later times and even in today. Do you remember people talking about Palestine in that area, and they couldn't believe land flowing with milk and honey? Really? Mark Twain wrote about that. You remember that? We have shown that on several occasions. Verse 9. And now behold, the cry of the sons of Israel has come to me. Furthermore, I have seen the oppression with which the Egyptians are oppressing them. So the Father heard the cry of the sons of Israel, and he knows how the Egyptians are oppressing them. And it's his crying out that he finally wanted out of them, I do believe. Verses 10 and 11, therefore come now, and I'll send you to Pharaoh, so that you may bring my people, the sons of Israel, out of Egypt. But Moses said to Elohim, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, and that I should bring the sons of Israel out of Egypt? You know, that's a good question. I don't blame him for asking that question. He's pointing out here that there's nothing he can do here by himself. And it's only through the power of Elohim that he's anything. Paul writes how through our weakness, his strength is made perfect in 2 Corinthians 12, verse 9. And he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for power is perfected in weakness. Most gladly, therefore, I will rather boast about my weaknesses, that the power of Messiah may dwell in me. Exodus 3, verse 12. And he said, certainly I will be with you, and this shall be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you brought the people out of Egypt, you shall worship Elohim at this mountain. So the sign that Elohim sent Moses to deliver them is that when they're delivered out of Egypt, they're going to meet at that mountain again.
Same spot.
Same spot, right? Verses 13 and 14, then Moses said to Elohim, behold, I'm going to the sons of Israel, and I shall say to them, the Elohim of your fathers has sent me to you. Now they say to me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? And Elohim said to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, I am has sent me to you. The literal translation of this phrase is stated as, I am who I am, is what it's saying, or I am the one who is. It's an expression of an absolute and unchanging eternal being. He's unchanging throughout and beyond time. Time doesn't affect him like it does us. Time is just an invention of his. With that being the case, his word has to be the same way. Okay? It's unchanging, unaltering. Time doesn't affect it. Circumstances don't affect it. They don't affect him. And just to back that up, I have a few scriptures that say his word doesn't change. Psalm 103, verses 17 and 18. But the loving kindness of Yahweh is from everlasting to everlasting on those who fear him, and his righteousness to children's children, to those who keep his covenant, and who remember his precepts to do them. What's his righteousness again? It'll be righteousness for us. Deuteronomy 6:25. If we are careful to follow his laws, commandments, statutes, and ordinances. Psalm 111, starting at verse 7. The works of his hands are truth and justice. All his precepts are sure. They are held up forever and ever. They're performed in truth and uprightness. He has sent redemption to his people. He has ordained his covenant forever. Holy and awesome is his name. The fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom. A good understanding have all those who do his commandments. His praise endures forever. Psalm 119, verse 89. Forever, O Yahweh, your word is settled in heaven. Psalm 119, verse 142. Your righteousness is an everlasting righteousness, and your Torah is truth. Psalm 119, verse 152. Of old I've known of your testimonies, that you have founded them forever. Verse 160 of Psalm 119. The sum of your word is truth, and every one of your righteous ordinances is everlasting. Psalm 119 is outstanding. Okay, it says, forever is his word. His righteousness is everlasting. His testimonies have been founded forever. His righteous ordinances are everlasting. Isaiah 40, verse 8, the grass withers, the flower fades, but the word of our Elohim stands forever. Isaiah 51, verses 7 and 8. Listen to me, you who know righteousness, a people in whose heart is my Torah. Do not fear the reproach of man, neither be dismayed at their revilings. For the moth will eat them like a garment, and the grub will eat them like wool. But my righteousness shall be forever, and my salvation to all generations. The new covenant, that's correct. That's exactly what he's talking about. Luke 16:17, it's easier for heaven and earth to pass away than for one stroke of a letter of the Torah to fail. That's Messiah. John 10:35. If he called them gods to whom the word of Elohim came, and the scripture cannot be broken. You see, here the Pharisees were chastising him for calling himself son of Elohim. And he said, well, there's a place in scripture where men are called gods. And scripture can't be broken. So let's go to verse 15 of Exodus 3. And by the way, I've got 50 more of those scriptures that say his word doesn't change, it's forever. It's just a fact. And if his word doesn't change, his Torah doesn't change, and the way he wants his people to act doesn't change. Verse 15 of Exodus 3. And Elohim furthermore said to Moses, thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, Yahweh, the Elohim of your fathers, the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Isaac, and the Elohim of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever. This is my memorial name to all generations. The word, he says, thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, Yahweh. And once again, how to exactly pronounce that, nobody is sure. The best guess by the most educated of those in Hebrew is Yahweh. Okay? So, at least what I've read. And his memorial name forever is Yahweh, the Elohim of Abraham, the Elohim of Isaac, and the Elohim of Jacob. Why is that so important? It's the covenant thing. It's that covenant thing which is so important. It's because the only reason anyone is going to be a part of the kingdom is because Elohim is faithful to keep his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's the only reason. Okay? Paul wrote about this, but it's so screwed up by not even translators so much, but yeah, translators, but mostly church dogma. One of my favorite passages. The way it's taught is absolutely meaningless by Christianity. For by grace you've been saved through faith, and not of yourselves, it's a gift of God, not as a result of works, that no one should boast. Normally people say, by grace I've been given faith, right? And that's how I'm saved, by faith that I got through grace, right? Isn't that what you're taught? Isn't that what's taught?
Yeah, and you're going to heaven automatically.
Yeah, go to heaven automatically, because you got a good feeling by grace, right? What he's doing here, he's battling Judaizers. What's a Judaizer? If I say Judaizer, I bet you've never met a Judaizer. I bet nobody in this room has met a Judaizer. But boy, Christians talk about them a lot. Some denominations more than others. They say that's those that are trying to convert people to Judaism. You ever had a Jew try to convert you to Judaism? Nope, me neither. A lot of them say, hi, I noticed you wear tzitzits too. They'll say, go away. They do not evangelize, okay? But back then, Paul was evangelizing. He was trying to get the word of Messiah and the message of how to live their lives, which is the Torah, to the Gentiles. He wanted to get that word out there. And the Judaizers didn't want him to do that. Okay, these that were believed in Judaism only and the inferiority of unclean Gentiles who are not circumcised. Okay, that was the big conflict that was going on. And they said, you don't have to listen to Paul. All you have to do is become a Jew and then follow our teaching. Okay? So what he's battling here is, it's not through membership and it's not through how you act by following their rules. That's what he's talking about here. But people don't talk about that in Christianity because they can't relate to this Judaizing thing. Well, Paul could. Okay, and that's what he wrote. That's what he was writing about. It was a problem. This is a warning of Paul. We can't seek our own salvation, whether it's through some silly ancestral bloodline, which is what the Jews claimed, or through anything we do ourselves. Either way. That's not why we're his. We're saved by Elohim's grace through faithfulness. Remember, whenever you see the word faith, it means faithfulness. Always.
Faithfulness.
Well, that's the question.
I know the answer.
Yeah. We're saved through the faithfulness of the Father to keep his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Deuteronomy 7, starting at verse 6. For you are a holy people to Yahweh your Elohim. Yahweh your Elohim has chosen you to be a people for his own possession out of all the peoples who are on the face of the earth. Yahweh did not set his love on you, nor choose you, because you are more in number than any of the peoples, for you were the fewest of all peoples. But because Yahweh loved you and kept the oath which he swore to your forefathers, Yahweh brought you out by a mighty mighty hand, and redeemed you from the house of slavery and the hand of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Know therefore that Yahweh your Elohim, he is Elohim, the faithful Elohim, who keeps his covenant and his loving kindness to 1,000th generation with those who love him and keep his commandments. The Father is the one that's faithful to his chosen ones. In Isaiah 49, starting at verse 7, thus says Yahweh, the Redeemer of Israel and its Holy One, to the despised one, to the one abhorred by the nation, to the servant of rulers, kings shall see and arise, princes shall also bow down, because of Yahweh, who is faithful, the Holy One of Israel, who has chosen you. Thus says Yahweh, in a favorable time I've answered you, and in the day of salvation I have helped you, and I will keep you and give you for a covenant of the people to restore the land, to make them inherit the desolate heritages. Okay, so he's going to be faithful, and he's going to restore the people that he's chosen to restore the land. That's what we're seeing today. That's what we're seeing. That land is the kingdom. Psalm 89, starting at verse 1, I will sing of the loving kindness of Yahweh forever. Okay, instead of loving kindness, what could that word be? Grace. Why is it not? Because that's a Tanakh, and they don't want that word, the G word, in the Tanakh. Okay, that's saved for the New Testament, because grace is a New Testament thing. Okay? And for the Old Testament, all you get in the Old Testament is loving kindness. Okay? And faithfulness. That's true. You get faithfulness there too. But when they translate quotes from the Tanakh that have faithfulness in them, let me tell you, a magic thing happens. It turns into faith. Is that not amazing? It's amazing. How does that happen? It's magic. Verse 2, for I have said, loving kindness, grace will be built up forever. In the heavens, you will establish your faithfulness. What did he write? What did Paul write? By grace, you've been saved through faithfulness. I've made a covenant with my chosen. Not by anything you've done. I've sworn to David, my servant, I'll establish your seed forever and build up your throne to all generations. Selah. It is through his faithfulness that we're saved. Let's look at some other writings of Paul in Romans. Romans 3, verses 3 and 4. What then, if some did not believe, their unbelief will not nullify the faithfulness of Elohim, will it? May it never be. Rather, let Elohim be found true, though every man be found a liar, as it is written, that you might be justified in your words and might prevail when you are judged. You know, interesting thing about Romans 3:3. What is that Greek word for faithfulness? Anybody know? Okay, it's pistis is what it's called, pistis. Now, what's the Greek word that's translated as faith? Though. What's the Greek word translated as faith? Something entirely different. Right, it's pistis. Yeah, you're right. I'm being facetious. It's the same word, but now we apply it to Elohim, so it must be faithfulness. Okay? You can't say that Elohim has faith in you and I, can we? No, he's much above that, okay? Yeah, he's much wiser than that, right? Right. See, when the Brit Hadashah applies pistis to Elohim, it's faithfulness. Okay? But when it's us, oh, it's faith. Oh, it's that emotion, you know, get a tear, pray for Jesus, and cry out. See, that's it's like I said before, I'm not saying it's a conspiracy, but it's a conspiracy. Okay? It's intentional. It's intentional. It's deceptive. Very deceptive. We've got to keep this emotional thing going. Okay? It's all emotion. It's by faith. How do you make your faith stronger? I got to make my faith stronger. How can I do that?
They tithe more when they have faith.
Oh, they tithe more when they have faith. That, what's the term they use for putting money in the bowl? Yeah, it's offerings, but stewardship. Stewardship. That's good stewardship is how you improve your faith. That means what you just said, Tom. More money in the plate. And you got to keep coming back, because faith is that, it's that butterfly you can't quite catch. Okay? It's a feel-good thing. It's pretty. Okay? Can't quite get my hands on it. How can I get a little closer to that butterfly? Come back next week. Okay? Now, don't step in sin. There's sin down there. Don't step in it. Well, what is that? Well, come back next week. And let me just change faith to faithfulness as it should be and see how much difference this makes. Romans 5, the first two verses. Therefore, having been justified by the faithfulness of Elohim, that's how we're justified, we have peace with Elohim through our Master Yeshua Messiah, through whom also we have obtained our introduction by his faithfulness into this grace on which we stand, and we exalt in, it says hope, but it should be expectation of the glory of Elohim. Now, doesn't that make a lot more sense than leaving those wispy, cloudy, fluttery type terms out, like faith? So, if we look at our passage here, Ephesians 2, verses 8 and 9. For by grace you have been saved through the faithfulness of the Father, and that not of yourselves. It, being grace, is the gift of Elohim, not as a result of works, that no one should boast. And you could throw verse 10 at the end, therefore we are his workmanship, created in Messiah Yeshua, for good works, his Torah, which Elohim prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. Okay. Well, if you're chosen, you're very fortunate. It's because the Father's faithful. Now, it's not anything you did. So, you're created to do what he wants you to do. Okay? Be obedient to him. So do that. That is Ephesians 2, 8 through 10. Look at, we are his workmanship in verse 10. Compare that to Psalm 100, verse 3. Know that Yahweh himself is Elohim. It is he who has made us, not we ourselves. We are his people and the sheep of his pasture. Psalm 138, verse 8. Yahweh will accomplish what concerns me. Your loving kindness, O Yahweh, is everlasting. Do not forsake the works of your hands. Nehemiah 9, verses 13 and 14 says, Then you did come down on Mount Sinai and did speak with them from heaven. You did give to them just ordinances and true laws, or laws of truth, good statutes and commandments. You did make them known to them, your holy Sabbath, and did lay down for them commandments, statutes, Torah, through your servant Moses. This is all that he requires of his people. Okay, that's all he requires. One of my favorite passages in all of Scripture, Deuteronomy 10, verses 12 and 13. And now, Israel, what does Yahweh your Elohim require from you? Well, since we're his workmanship, okay, and he chose us through his graciousness and his faithfulness in keeping his covenant. So now what does Yahweh your Elohim require from you? But to fear Yahweh your Elohim, to walk in all his ways and love him, and to serve Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart and with all your soul, and to keep Yahweh's commandments and his statutes, which I'm commanding you today for your good. So the whole passage, Ephesians 2, 8 through 10, for by grace you've been saved through the faithfulness of the Father, that not of yourselves. That grace is the gift of Elohim, not as a result of works. It's not about anything you did, that no one should boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Messiah Yeshua for good works, which is his Torah, which Elohim prepared beforehand that we should walk in them. And is this probably the staple passage for Christianity? If you were to ask a Christian, how are you saved? What would they say? What would a Christian say? Just like that. By faith. Yep. By faith. And then the learned ones would say by grace through faith. Yeah. I'm saved by grace.
Which is half true. It's not their faith or their grace. It's by Yeshua's faith.
Yeah.
Faithfulness. Yeah, but
And grace.
it's when they take it into I'm saved by my emotions. There's no truth there at all. Yeah, because that's what they mean.
Yeah, I know.
They mean I'm saved by my emotions.
Yeah.
And they don't understand that Elohim owes us nothing.
Yeah, that's right. He owes us nothing. He doesn't owe us a darn thing. Whereas in Christianity, they almost teach, essentially, if you ask Jesus into your heart, which is not in Scripture anywhere, this is pretty much what they teach. If you ask Jesus in your heart, he owes it to you. He owes you salvation. Yep. He owes you. Okay? All right? I asked you into my heart. You owe me. Okay, they don't have that attitude per se. But that's what they say. That's what they say. Through an unscriptural declaration. Okay. See if I can rant about something else here. Verses 16 and 17. Go and gather the elders of Israel together and say to them, Yahweh, the Elohim of your fathers, the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has appeared to me, saying, I am indeed concerned about you and what has been done to you in Egypt. So I said, I'll bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt to the land of the Canaanite, the Hittite, the Amorite, the Perizzite, the Hivite, the Jebusite, to a land flowing with milk and honey. Well, Moses, he's going to gather these elders of Israel, and they're all going to approach Pharaoh together. Verse 18, and they will pay heed to what you say. And you, with the elders of Israel, will come to the king of Egypt, and you'll say to him, Yahweh, the Elohim of the Hebrews, has met with us. So now, please let us go a 3 days' journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to Yahweh our Elohim. Elohim just said he's going to deliver them from Egypt. Okay, to a land flowing with milk and honey. But what's this about a 3 days journey? Is he saying something different now? See, what he's doing, he's not being deceptive. He wants to demonstrate the true colors of Pharaoh. Okay? He's not going to even grant them a 3 days journey, much less a full release. Elohim wanted the elders and the people to realize the true heart of Pharaoh. Now, this true heart of Pharaoh, they're going to learn one thing here. Not only am I not going to let you guys go, I am not going to let you go a 3 days journey. What were they going to do in that 3-day journey? Worship Elohim. His hatred isn't toward the people. His hatred's toward Elohim. Which hates the people too, but secondarily as much. You know, if you want to appease the people, 3 days, yeah, okay. We can work something out. But no, he didn't want appeasement, he wanted to show them that he is above their Elohim. Verses 19 and 20. But I know that the king of Egypt will not permit you to go except under compulsion. So I'll stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all my miracles, which I shall do in the midst of it, and after that he will let you go. See, he's not guessing what's going to happen. Well, I'm going to try a few things, we'll get a pinch hitter in there every once in a while, and we'll do a few things. He's telling them exactly what's going to happen. Verse 21, and I'll grant this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. And it shall be that when you go, you will not go empty-handed. So when they leave, they're not going to leave empty-handed. As a matter of fact, they plundered the Egyptians before they left. Yeah, the Egyptians paid them to go. Now keep in mind, remember what the Egyptians owned at this time? Everything in the world. They got it all. Yeah, because of Joseph. They got it all. Well, guess what? Israel gets it now. Yeah, you get 400 years of free labor. That can add up. You put interest on that? Shoot. Overtime, yeah. Yeah. Exodus 12, verses 35 and 36. Now the sons of Israel had done according to the word of Moses, for they had requested from the Egyptians articles of silver and articles of gold and clothing. And Yahweh had given the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they let them have their request. Thus they plundered the Egyptians. And then lastly, for Exodus 3, verse 22, but every woman shall ask of her neighbor and the woman who lives in her house articles of silver and articles of gold and clothing. You shall put them on your sons and daughters, thus you will plunder the Egyptians. So that's what they're going to get. It's payback for 400 years of forced labor. The hearts of the Egyptians are going to be opened to the Israelites. They're going to give them everything they want, just so they leave. Okay? Just leave. That's right.
Change his mind though.
Oh no. Well, yeah, he does. He does change his mind, but Elohim deals with that too. It is costly. Any questions on Exodus 3?